Hey guys, Sonny's Pitmaster Shannon Snell back with another Tales from the Pit, and I am freaking excited today because we are doing St. Louis ribs. With that being said, I'm gonna give you my take on how to prepare St. Louis ribs. If you go to any grocery store, you're gonna find these. These are St. Louis ribs. They're cut down, they're tapered down. Normally they have some membrane skirt hanging over the top that gets tapered down so that these cook a lot evenly. So let me show you how to prepare these things. So right here is what you got. So on the front, you notice a lot of marbling throughout this entire slab, which is awesome. We talked about before in earlier videos, if you go back and watch them, that marbling is nothing but flavor, okay? We don't call it fat, we call it flavoring. That's the good stuff. Now there is some stuff that you need to go on and trim off, like some of the stuff that looks unappetizing. Go on, trim that off. You may not need that, but like all this stuff in the middle, that's the good stuff, right? If you flip it over, you notice that you see kind of like this membrane this membrane thing on the back. We want to remove that, and the reason why is because it's not going to, when you get your rub on your slab of ribs here, it's not going to get that rub down inside of that, because when we pull this membrane off, it's really thick. It's hard to get past. So you can either score it, which people do with a knife, seen that all the time, or you just can remove it, which is even more simple. So all you need is a paper towel, okay? And if you go right between the second bone right here, you can normally try to peel the membrane back. You get all that stuff off of there, and voila. It's gone, okay? Now you can see that membrane's gone. It's exposing some of that marbling, some of that good melty fat on the back. So when you put rub on it, and when it cooks down, it'll penetrate all the way through the rib on both the top and the bottom. You want to season both sides of your rib. Super important, because whenever you bite into a rib, you got to realize your tongue is hitting the underside of the rib. So the bottom side is just as important as the top side, which is going to be your show side. Rub, you can use anything. Get a good porky rub. You can find some at the store that are already made, or you can be like me. You can do some stuff with garlic, salt, pepper, some sugar in here. Sugar and pork are great together. So you want to hold your hand about 6 inches from the board when you're shaking, and just liberally spread some on the back of this rib. And remember, the back is just as important as the front. Okay, before you flip that rib over, because we still need to get the front side, make sure you press that rub in. And we don't call it a rub. A rub is not a rub. You don't rub the rub in because it's going to smear, okay? A lot of times people say, well, it's a rub because you're just rubbing it in, you're massaging it in. No, because if you rub the rub in, it's going to create clumps, all right? Especially with the meat being a little bit moist as it is now, it's going to create little clumpy things. So when somebody bites into a rib, once it's done, they might get a really big pocket of rub on there, which you don't want. So make sure you just press it in. Flip it over, and repeat the same thing, and repeat the same process. 6 inches right above your rib, and just cover the whole rib like that. Voila. Press the rub in. Don't rub it in, press it in. Okay, now this is a super important part, okay? You're gonna let these ribs chill, all right? They're gonna hang out for about 20 minutes, okay? We need the rub that you put on there is gonna start looking a little bit wet. It's gonna start bringing out some of the moisture inside that rib to the surface, so that it gives it a really nice color even before you put it onto the smoker, okay? I'm gonna crank this smoker to 275 degrees. 275 degrees is home, okay? We'll be back at the wrapping process, which is a super important part of ribs, how you get them tender and how you inject some more flavor into it. So stay tuned. All right, ribs are off, okay? They were on for probably about, at 275 degrees, they were on about 90 minutes. So the qualifiers you wanna look before you take them off to be wrapped is that you need your rub to be set. So on this slab of ribs right here is that rub that we put on the top. If you can take your finger, this is a smear test, and you can wipe your finger across it and the rub does not come off, that means your rub is set, all right? That bark is set on there, your rub is set. That means it's ready to be wrapped, because you're gonna just inject the rest of that flavor that you want inside of it. All right, so what am I gonna do now? I'm gonna create a wrap. A wrap is the way to inject some more flavor into a rib. And now as we're wrapping it, because we're gonna wrap it in aluminum foil, we just need to get it done. Remember, this rib has some intramuscular fat, but it's a bone-in meat. It's very thin, so you don't want to take all day cooking it, because if you cook all that fat out of it, it's gonna be dry. Nobody likes a dry rib. I got some butter here, okay? Now I got some butter spray. You can use Parquet, which is squeezed butter. You can use butter pats, okay? Which you generally want about 4 tablespoons of butter. 4 tablespoons of butter for 1 rack of ribs. Think about that, 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm just gonna basically spray this, I'm gonna spray this sheet right here, because I want that butter flavor. I want it to melt down, but this has always worked well for me in the past. All right, next up, we got brown sugar. All right, brown sugar is a staple in a lot of barbecue sauces, but it's also a staple in the wraps that we use for ribs or pork or anything that you might use along those lines. About a quarter of a cup, quarter to half a cup of brown sugar. And now you're gonna just spread this the width of your rib, all right? Try to get the width of your rib here and kind of spread it to that angle. You had your rub that you originally put on there. Take a little bit more of your rub and sprinkle some on there. It's just gonna give it that little bit more pop, especially if you got a good rub like I do, and it's gonna give it that color that you really like. Just need a little bit goes a long way. And lastly, some honey here, right? You got honey, brown sugar, butter. So we're gonna put probably about 2 tablespoons of honey in this wrap here. Cover it up, and you wanna put it right over top of the brown sugar. You can put it in any order that you want, but generally you want that rub to be on last, second to last, because it's gonna be the color, it's gonna be that extra pop that you were looking for. You're gonna take your rib, and you're gonna lay it face down inside this wrap, okay? And then this is where it's really super important, is that you're gonna wrap it up super tight. Now you don't want any holes in this foil. You don't want this stuff that you're injecting into this wrap that's going into this rib, you don't want that stuff leaking out, all right? You want that to stay in there, you want it to braise the meat. Now notice I said braise, okay? Because you don't want it steaming. This is why you wrap it super tight. When you have a loose wrap and you allow air to get in, that steams the rib. A steamed rib will lose all the bark, all the color off your rib. When you braise the rib, it allows these juices and honeys and stuff to kind of braise it naturally and cook it a lot faster. So wrap it tight. Even if you have to, double wrap it, okay? Super important that you do that because you don't want any holes in that. It's nice and tight, all right? I have no steam, no room for steam, no room for air to get in there. So this liquid on the bottom is gonna braise this rib. It's gonna be really good. It's gonna be really tasty. I'm gonna get these back on the smoker, okay? Because they gotta finish up cooking, all right? See you guys in just a few minutes. So I got my slab of ribs right here. You can see this beautiful shine that I have on them. I use Sonny sweet sauce, so it took these ribs another 75 minutes. So the beginning, from the very first stage when we stuck them on raw, it took 90 minutes at 275 degrees for that rub to set, right? We got our wrap down with that honey, that brown sugar, that goodness there with that extra rub that we stuck in there, that butter, all right? We got it in there, all right? That took another 75 minutes at the same 275 degrees. You're looking for an internal temperature somewhere between 195 to 205, okay? Now that really depends on the thickness of your ribs, okay? You wanna make sure that your ribs, if you're looking for a qualifier, temperature is great, but make sure that if you stuck a toothpick in your ribs, that is probe tender, not falling apart, not when you pick up your ribs, they still should have some give to them. So if I pick these up, look at the bend in them. They don't break apart, all right? But they're still bite through great ribs. I then pulled them out, I sauced them up, it went back on for 10 or 15 minutes to let that sauce tack up, and then you guys can see some of this Sonny sweet sauce missing because I used Sonny sweet sauce. It made these ribs look like this, and Sonny sweet sauce is one of the best sauces that you can have for pork. Pork, we're talking pulled pork, we're talking about these ribs here. So, the moment of truth, I'm gonna slice into these ribs, and I'm gonna show you exactly how easily this knife kind of glides through them like butter. Look at those ribs right there. And look at the shine on them. That nice brown sugar that kind of caramelized on there. The sugar's in that sauce. It just looks absolutely perfect. Some of the best looking ribs I've ever seen, and definitely the best tasting. All right? If you're not feeling this, hey, going into Sonny's barbecue, if you're not feeling it, hey, we do ribs just like this every single day, okay? Really, trust me, I'm the Pitmaster. I wouldn't lie to you. My name is Shannon Snell, Pitmaster Sonny's Barbecue. Be looking out for us on another Tales from the Pit. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining me.